and I work for ABCI. ABCI helps aviation companies sell more of their products and services. And John, if you want to go next, and we'll let Bill go last. And
yeah, well, she's the rock star. I work for her. I do all the support and the financial stuff.
Absolutely. And John's got a cold today, so he's
Oh, yeah, a lot of people are sick. Yeah.
right. Just took a COVID test and came up negative, so you won't get that from him today.
No, don't. I'm not worried about it. I wouldn't be worried about it if he was in the same room with me. So, I'm Bill Caskey. I have worked with business-to-business sales teams and salespeople over the last 30 years, basically helping them to grow their business without all the grinding and the burning out that sometimes occurs with high growth. And so we've figured out a way to take another look, an alternative look at selling and marketing and messaging so that people can grow their business without the burnout that accompanies that. So that's my story that I will stick to.
Well, fantastic. Happy to hear it. And happy birthday, Bill, by the way.
Thank you.
Honored that you would spend your birthday with us. I mean, geez.
Well, you know what's the fact is that my birthday was yesterday, but the birthday video that I sent out didn't get sent out until today. So you are not interrupting my birthday because it was yesterday.
Oh, well, I hope you had a great birthday.
Yeah, I did. It was like any other day. When you're my age, you just keep working. So
there you go. Same with us.
Yeah. Did go out to a nice dinner last night, going out to dinner tonight. We always kid in our family, birthdays tend to go for like days and days, sometimes weeks, because, we want to celebrate and not everybody can do it at one time. So
right.
This is a long, protracted birthday.
Exactly. We like to celebrate birthday weeks.
Yeah, good.
But include a weekend, of course. So that's great. And it looks like we're having a couple of other people join. If you would like to introduce yourself, you are welcome to do that and do a 15-second sales pitch for your company, your product or service. That's one of the things that we practice. If not, that is totally fine too. But I think we'll just go ahead and get started. I have to say, this is the only book that we have ever had twice as a book club selection. And the reason is because last time we had it was several years ago, and we've had a lot of new people join us. And I think it's probably the most useful book on sales that I have ever read.
Thank you.
And, I don't want to sound too biased just because you're here, because I've told people that before, haven't I, John?
Thank you. Thank you. John's not talking, so that's good.
No, sorry. I try to catch the mute, but I need to cough, but I missed it that time.
Absolutely. No, I've talked about it a lot because I really enjoy the all of the examples. And the thing that I like the most is that your style is so much more appropriate, I think, for our industry than a lot of the sales teachers and professionals who are used to retail, used to other markets where hype is your friend. And, that's really kind of not your thing. I know you have a lot to do with energy, but that's a totally different thing, I think, than the artificial hype that you get from a lot of sales folks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right. Well, I know we're here to hear from you. So let's let you take it away if you don't mind.
We'll get into it. All right. Well, thanks, Paula, for having me in, and I appreciate it so much. And we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the book this month. It came out 20 years ago. It was released in February of 2001, or whatever that is, 2001. And so we're doing a little celebration here. So I've been posting some things on LinkedIn. I know you've seen and commented on a couple. And I think, when you look at a book like this that's 20 years old, you have to ask yourself, well, is there anything new, or are you saying the same book applies? And I'd say probably 90% of it still applies, because a lot of it was about the mindset, the inner game, the mentality that we take with us when we're going out to the market to either pursue a sale or be involved in the sales process. I think all the same principles still apply. There were some things in there that I would do differently if I were to rewrite it. I probably need to rewrite another version now that it's been 20 years, but most of it applies. But I want to share with you and the gang today some things from the book, but also some other things that I think are a little bit more modern in terms of how we, especially in the world that we're just coming out of, the COVID pandemic world. I think there's things that we can alter so that we can reinvent ourselves appropriately. So, the bottom line is, and I always tell people this, if you have a question, you're welcome to put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand or whatever. I'm going to go through this kind of gently for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and I'll open it up for questions or comments. And then if there's none, I'll continue on through it. I've got some PowerPoints here, and I don't overload you with those. I've got 5. So if you want to take a screenshot of something, there's a couple things in here that I think might be good screenshots for you to kind of keep with you if you are so inclined. So you feel free to do that. Book's copyrighted, but some of these PowerPoints are not. So feel free to use it however you see fit. When I started in the training business in 1990, 10 years before the book came out, I would come home at night and document some of the problems that my clients were having. And there were problems like can't get to the right person, I can't generate enough leads. I feel like I'm used for information. I feel like they just, kind of put me through the ringer, and then there's nothing at the end. I spent a lot of hours with proposals, and then nothing happens. And all those things that I heard, I would write down, and then I would attempt to solve them, because I solved a lot of these problems or remedied some of them in the training, but I wanted to document them. And so I started this process of doing that, and it eventually turned into a book, Same Game, New Rules. And I still do the same thing today. Whenever somebody has something they share with me that's kind of a weird one, or it's a more modern problem, I still document them, and I've probably got enough for several more books, but I need to sit down and write them. They don't write themselves, I find. So over the course of those 20 years, I find that salespeople, generally, the game is the same. We are out there trying to acquire clients or customers, however you call them. We are trying to shorten the sales process as much as we can. We're trying to position our products and our services in a manner that will cause people to say, yeah, you know what, I need to talk to you. And sometimes that's done personally. Today, it's done more digitally on LinkedIn, Facebook, some of the platforms, but it's still the same concepts. The same concepts still apply. So whether you are a sales VP, a sales professional on front lines, or a CEO of a company, I think all these principles work because everybody is in the same game. We want to grow our business. We want to acquire new customers. We want to do it in the minimum possible time. And we don't want to do it with pressure. Yeah. Because the brand that we all have in the market should not be one of high pressure sales. I know there are some organizations who kind of pride themselves in that. I don't find most business to business operations wanting to be high pressure. But unfortunately, it's like whenever I get in front of accountants, I always ask them, or engineers, or any kind of non-salesperson, I always ask them, what do you hate most about salespeople? And of course, they'll say pressure and manipulation and all those things. And yet when they go out, they do the same thing. Yeah. It's not because they want to be manipulative or high pressure. It's because they don't know another way. Mm-hmm. And so I think at our heart, I don't know that any of us are born salespeople. I think a lot of us have learned the craft over the years. And unfortunately, some of the things we've learned, as you said, Paula, are not good. They actually, in many ways, force the prospect away instead of attract them. And that seems counterintuitive. If you're trying to generate business, you would think that you would want to do things that attracted people rather than repelled them. I'm okay with repelling non-prospects, but once somebody gets in your funnel and is a real opportunity, I think we want to be mindful of how we take them through the process. And so that's what Same Game, New Rules is all about. So I've got a few slides here that I want to share with you, and maybe we can have some discussion on that. I think I have the ability to share my screen. Yes, no? Yeah, I should. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So hopefully you can see this. So I believe that if we're going to create a sales process, why not start with the ideal sales process? And the ideal process is not you banging out phone calls to the tune of 100 a day. Although I know some business development people, that's all they do is cold outreach.
Yeah.
I think the ideal sales process for most business to business organizations should be this, and I'm going to go through this really quickly. I call it the journey. There's first a trigger. A potential client or prospect has a trigger. They become familiar with a problem they have or an unrealized opportunity. Now, they might become familiar with that through an article, through a friend, through some kind of content that you publish, or it may be through a cold outreach or some kind of networking event. So I think that there's always a trigger that makes that causes the prospect to think a little bit and say, wait a minute, do I have that problem? Do I have that problem solved? Is there any way I can do better at that? At some point after that triggers, there's a search that goes on. And typically that search is, they might ask a friend, they might ask a colleague, somebody else in the company, hey, we're looking to solve this accounting problem. Do you know somebody who does that? Obviously, they're searching on Google or online, but there's always a search once the trigger happens. And then hopefully they find you. And again, we're talking about the ideal sales process. Ideal sales process is they search for, how do I solve the problem of X? And your name pops up or your company pops up. Now that's a little difficult. You can spend a lot of time and a lot of money trying to get, high in the search terms. But the fact is that you can do it. And even if it's on LinkedIn, you can create content that speaks directly to that problem. And so those of you who know a lot about SEO know that the best kind of SEO is where you write an article that deals with a specific problem. Like, how do I grow my business, without giving away the farm, without discounting. So whatever that problem is, that's a really good way to create content around that, because you will be found that way. Sometimes it's referrals. Sometimes they say to a neighbor, hey, we're looking for somebody who does that. Do you know somebody? You don't have much control there. If they know you and like you and they're a client of yours, they will probably give the prospect your name. But that's a really hard thing to manage. Got some newcomers, Phil, Doug, good afternoon. Glad you're here.
Good afternoon.
I did a whole song and dance routine. You missed all that, so you'll have to watch it on.
Sorry.
You're probably glad you missed that, huh?
My
Been
meeting
listening to your podcast,
so
so I know you a little bit already, so it's great. Thanks.
So at some point they find you. And when they find you, they either invite you in, they email you, there's some kind of connection, correspondence. And then number 4 is their reveal. And that's where they're revealing to you the full set of issues they have, the full, the dilemmas they're in, the problems they're in. And you've got to make sure, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, you've got to make sure that you are mindful that how you show up determines how open they are. How you show up, and I don't mean how, like, what are you wearing, although that could be part of it. By the way, I'm wearing a golf shirt today because it was 65 in our city the last 3 days, although today it's 20. So I got spring fever, so I thought I'd put a golf shirt on. But how you show up mentally and emotionally and tactically from a language standpoint determines how open they'll be. If they feel trusting in you, if they feel like you're a colleague and you're going to help them, you're a helper, you're a server, they will share everything with you. I've had clients who say, I'd like to schedule a 15-minute phone call, go for an hour, because once they start talking about their problems, they can't stop. And all I've got to do is just shut the hell up and listen. And I know that you've all probably experienced that as well. This is part of the old training is, sell hard, convince, put pressure, lead them through the process, get to the close. And that kind of stuff just doesn't work today. People are onto that. They know what that's about and they want no part of it. So the reveal, where the prospective customer or client is sharing with you what their issues are. And we'll talk about what issues they are. Those might be a little bit later. At some point, number 5 in the ideal sales process is you tell them, look, I appreciate you sharing this with me. let me go back and think, or let me go back and talk to some of my people, or let me analyze the situation. I never make recommendations on the phone. If somebody calls and says, hey, I want you to come in for a 3-day sales meeting, and I want to know, how it works, what's the price. I never do that on the first call. Sometimes I'll do price if I feel like I've got to disqualify them. But generally, I always say, look, let me give this some thought. You've given me some good notes. Is it okay if I call you back in the next couple of days and let's talk about a solution? And people always are okay with that if they're in the right position. So I like thinking about number 5 here as a recommendation rather than a proposal or a presentation. I always feel like the word presentation kind of conjures up, you're putting on a show for them, hoping they clap. And I don't like that. I think that takes all the power that you have and gives it to them. So I prefer to think of it as a recommendation. That's what consultants do. It's what surgeons do. It's what doctors do. They give you a recommendation on how to fix the problem that you've brought to them. And then number 6, the ideal is they are thrilled that you came in. They are thrilled with the solution. They can't wait to start. How quickly can we get started? That is the ultimate outcome after the recommendation step. So again, some of you have probably seen this before. You have clients, customers you work with now where this is exactly the thing that happens. But I always use this up front because this is the ideal. This is our vision. This is how we want all sales processes to go ideally, even though I fully understand they don't always do that. So as you go through your process, and we talked today a little bit about marketing and mindset and message, I think you have to throw it through this filter. And if you do that, I think you'll find some holes in your process where you'll say, you know what? Now that I think about it, everything we talk about is proposal or presentation. We can just change that word. It's a very slight tweak. And that's what all this is about, is just slight tweaks. I don't want to reinvent your entire personality, because nobody wants to do that. And I don't know how to do that anyway. I'm looking for the slight tweaks, the little things you can do differently. And some of the language you can use is different. Everybody cool with that? Does anybody have any questions about that? We can stop after each one of these slides and just field some questions, or does everybody kind of understand what I'm getting at here?
I've got one question, and that is, I think, especially in your video from this morning, or from yesterday, it came out this morning, you mentioned that what happens before the process starts, before the call, before any of this happens, is like the most important thing. And I guess, in this process, as a salesperson, it comes before the trigger, and before the search, it becomes before the find.
Yeah.
Before I reach out to someone, or before someone picks up the phone and calls me, if I don't have a process, and a lot of people don't, then you're already sunk. So
most people don't. Most people, I mean, on this call, everybody probably does or might, but
that's true.
Most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Most people rely on just sheer brute force to get people into their funnel. So here's a suggestion based on that, Paula, is, LinkedIn has become a favorite go-to for a lot of people today. Yeah. And we have all these connections. I bet there's, between the 6 of us, there's thousands of connections we have, but we don't use them very well. They just kind of sit there in the clouds, or as my friend calls it, in the clouds. And sometimes I think it's good if you want to reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, instead of reaching out like we've all been reached out to, and say, hey, Doug, I noticed we were connected. Thought it would be good to get together for a cup of coffee sometime. It's like, if I drank coffee with all these people, I'd be jittery as hell all day. So that's not a good way to start. A better way to begin is for you to shoot a video where you talk about the 5 major problems, or 3 or whatever, facing your client base. Put it on YouTube or put it on one of your websites. And then when you reach out to somebody, you say, hey, Doug, I noticed we're connected. I just did a video the other day where I addressed some of the key problems that CPAs have in trying to get new clients. I thought you might like to see it. Here's the link.
Yeah.
So now, before you even talk to them, they're more likely to watch that than they are to join you for a cup of coffee or dinner at a country club, just because of the way how we're all wired today. And I've had a lot of success. My clients almost all of them have some kind of process up front where they consume content of some kind before they ask for the appointment. And it works marvelously, but it means you've got to shoot a video and you've got to have a camera or a phone, you've got to have a micro, you got to have lighting, all that stuff. But think about how you can scale your business. If you reach out to 100 people on LinkedIn over the next month and you link that video, you're going to have 20 people who watch it. And then you can follow up with them later and you'll get some appointments from it. And I like that better than trying to arm wrestle people for a meeting. It just feels like that's such an old thing. Does it work? Of course. You arm wrestle enough people, you're going to win some. But I like the idea of using digital technology to scale my lead generation so that it's not always up to me, because they could be watching that video at midnight when they can't sleep because they couldn't wait to watch it. And now I've got something out there working for me as I'm laying down at night, resting my eyes. So,
absolutely.
So that I don't know if that answers it, but that's part of using the upfront part of the process to trigger. So you can create the trigger, but it's got to be valuable for them. It can't just be meeting for lunch. And I'm not insinuating you guys do that, but I get that. I get that email or that message all the time. Let's get together. Let's jump on a Zoom call. I don't have time to jump on a Zoom call. Give me a 3-minute video. I might watch it, especially if it really interests me. Okay, I'll shut up. Anybody else have anything on the ideal sales process? Any lesson here? Anything that you look at and say, we're pretty good at 4 of these, but God, the one we're just not quite there yet? Or are you comfortable sharing that?
Wow, I think you got a great crowd.
Great crowd.
Do a
all right.
Consultation. I think we call our recommendations well, that's not necessarily true, because that happens during the reveal. Our consultation happens. We do that as one step. We do a consultation and then a report as a result of the consultation.
Good. Is that a free consultation or do you get paid for it?
It's a free consultation.
Okay. So that's part of the reveal step, is where they reveal to you. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And then you provide them something after that kind of fine tunes or recaps that. Yeah,
it's a recap with a more specific recommendations.
Course of action. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Great.
I'm not going to get into presentation today, but I did have a quick story I'll tell about how to not do it and how to do it. I wrote here, you might have seen it if any of you are connected with me. I fell on the ice the other day. I'm in Indiana and we have a lot of ice, and there was a day we had some dark ice or black ice or whatever it is. I couldn't see it. I stepped on it, boom, feet went out from under me. And I tried to catch myself with my left hand. Bad idea. Better just to drop. And I had something in my other hand. And I went to the doctor because I was recommended a surgeon who does rotator cuff. That's what I have, got a torn rotator cuff, and went in and he said, yep, you need surgery. He did an MRI and he showed me where the problem was. And he said, yeah, we need to operate. We need to do it in the next 30 to 45 days because our experience is that it's better if it's done quickly. And I said, well, what are the chances of me fully recovering? He said, you'll never get it all back. You just won't, because it's traumatized, because you may be 80, 90%, but at your age, you always hate it when doctors say at your age. He said, and you're not, it's your non-dominant hand. So if you're going to be throwing with your grandkids or kids, it's not going to affect you. 80, 90%, about all you can hope for. I said, okay, great. So he hands me this 7th generation copy of a copy for pre-op. He said, here, be here at next Friday, and here's your pre-op stuff. And he gave me a sheet, and it was kind of, and this is a legitimate operation. This is not like a hole-in-the-wall orthopedic surgeon. And I thought, okay, this doesn't feel right. I said, what's the post-op? Once we're done, then what? What does the rehab look like? He goes, well, it kind of depends. And I said, do you have something I can look at here? Like what it looks like to recover? He goes, no, not really. Don't really have anything. We'll get that set up when you're done with surgery. I said, okay. So my wife said, you need to get a second opinion. And I knew if I went to another surgeon, I knew what the opinion would be. Yep, got to operate. So I went to a physical therapist, and he specializes in shoulders here in Indianapolis. And so I went to him and I told him the situation. He said, we can get it 80 to 90%. We can get it there. It might take a couple of months, few months, but you won't have the surgery and all the rehab from that. He says, "Because I'm going to do the same rehab, whether you have surgery or whether you just come in here. It's the same kind of process." And I said, "What does it look like?" He goes, "Well, phase one is we're going to work on flexibility." And he hands this sheet to me that has phase one, phase two, phase three. Phase one, flexibility. Phase two, mobility, or those might have been switched. And phase three is strength. And he says, each one takes about 3 to 4 weeks, 6 to 7 sessions each. And that's my goal, is to get you here in 90 days. And he shared with me where he'd like to get me in terms of percent mobility. And I looked at the sheet that he gave me, and I looked at nothing that the surgeon gave me. And this PT is a couple grand. Surgeon's probably 15. I mean, I've got insurance, but I know that it's expensive, plus all the downtime. And I may have been wrong in going with the PT, but I felt comfort. I felt like, well, this dude knows what he's doing. At least there's a plan here.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing on the recommendation that you've got to realize with your potential customers is they want to feel like you're going to take care of them. And if you don't tell them, here's what happens, this is one thing that I've encouraged all my clients to do is, as you get down to the 11th hour and you're getting close to the end, close or whatever, share with them, in the event we work together, let me tell you what it looks like. Phase one, we have 3 meetings. Phase two, we start working on the problem. Phase three, we measure metric, whatever that is, give them some kind of sense that you've got a plan, because they have to have confidence, not just in you personally, but that you have a systematic way to solve their problem. And so many companies forget that. They're so interested in making the sale, they don't think that part of the sale could be hurried up by letting them know, here's what's going to happen once you sign. In the event you decide to use us and we decide that you're a good fit, here's what it looks like. So that's another way to do the recommendation, is actually lay out a timeline. And some of you might be in a business, oh, it just doesn't make sense. It's a simpler business than that. But if it's a big ticket sale, 10 grand, 50 grand, 500 grand, I think people need to know what's going to happen once I say yes.
Right.
So that's just a little,
absolutely, I love that.
A long story with a little tip attached to it. So, and confidence is the main thing there. The confidence, we always talk about confidence, our confidence, which I think is important, self-confidence, but they've got to have confidence in your ability to solve their problem. They've shared with you all their problems after the reveal. They've shared with you everything you need to know about their business and their issues, their dilemmas and their vision. Now you need to put that into action. And the way you do it, I think, is through a timeline or the solution process. We always talk about sales process, seldom the solution process. Okay, I'm going to keep moving if there's nothing. All right. One of the things that I put in the book in the very beginning, and I've changed this a little bit, so I'll share with you how I've changed it. I call it the fundamental shift. And I think we need to have a mental shift in how sales is conducted. And I have witnessed people who use these 5 elements really alter their confidence level, and also the confidence level that their prospects and clients have in them. It's 5 areas that I think will radically improve your results. And this is, we covered this in the main book, but I've changed the diagram a little bit. You see around the outside, there's 4 elements. There's 1 in the middle. I'll go around the outside first. Abundance. We have to have in our mind that our market is abundant. It doesn't mean it's infinite. Doesn't mean it never ends, but it means that as I look to the market, I can see a lot of opportunity. And this helps you as you're going out to the market to not get so attached to a deal. If you see that, man, there's a lot of pain here. Customers have a lot of pain. Some of that pain they know about, some they don't know about. But I think that helps you to take on this attitude of abundance in the market. And it's better for the prospect because they don't have a a hostage taker on their hands. They don't have a salesperson who's constantly persistent. I always say, if the prospect's not behaving properly, tell them it's over. Tell them, look, I kind of get the feeling that this is not working, or I've said something, or it's not a fit. Let me know. Tell me that. If you're in scarcity mode, you can't say that. Number two, around the corner there is high intent. High intent takes care of all fear in sales. And I know that's a bold, arrogant statement, maybe, but when your intent is all about you, what's going to happen to you, am I going to get this deal or not? How am I going to spend my commission? What am I going to tell my people at the office if I come back empty-handed and don't have the order, or whatever? However, it used to work that way. I don't know if it works that way anymore. But high intent is where it's all about them. Your intention is about them. It comes in at a high place. It's about their problems, their situations, dilemmas, visions. And if we are always focused on the customer and their problems and less so on ours, I see, and I've witnessed it, where you have a higher closing percentage when you operate from a place of high intent. Plus, I don't know if I said this in the book, I don't think I did. When you're operating from a place of high intent, you can demand the prospect operates from that place too. Yes. If you're operating from what's in it for me, when are we going to close the business? You have no power in the relationship. You're a hostage. You're down here. You've elevated them up here. They got the money. You might have the solution, but their money is more important to you than your solution is to them. Terrible dynamics. So when you operate from a place of high intent, all fear goes away because it's not about you anymore. It's about them. If they decide that they don't have a problem worth solving, or you decide they don't have a problem worth solving, the deal's done and you move on. And there's not this fear and emotional attachment and things like that. So high intent, and it's hard because sometimes we can have high intent on the first call. We can really be there for them. And as we get sucked into the process, we start wondering, when's this going to close? And I told my boss 30 days and it's the 25th day and he's pressuring me. Now the intent, you've lost the intent. So high intent is really a big one for us. Number three, and I'll stop here at the end. You can ask any questions or critique it. Expert status. I'm just going around the outside here. Expert status is where you are the expert. You have some expertise that you're bringing to the table. And sometimes that expertise doesn't have to be technical expertise. It can just be, I'm good at finding problems. Your expertise could be in the sales process, in the problem finding process, but you need to position yourself and carry the kind of the banner of expert, not the world's foremost authority, but just somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. And I find salespeople sometimes have so little expertise, technical expertise, that and they've been told, you don't worry about technical expertise. Let our technical people be concerned with that. But the prospect wants to know what you know or what your company knows. So I think expert status is huge. And the last thing here on the upper left is the buyer-seller dance. And this is the dance that occurs between you and the potential client. Most of the time, the dance, the way it's traditionally been done, is you are the seller trying to get the buyer to buy, convincing, persuading, trying to hold their feet to the fire and follow up when they told you to follow up, and then you get crickets. And the whole buyer-seller dance, I think, is broken. I would prefer we flip the script there and say, how can we create an atmosphere where the buyer is selling me on why they need what I have, either because they have severe problems, they have problems that cost them a lot of money, they have a vision for their life that's been unrealized yet. So I want to flip the buyer-seller dance to be in control of it. Important point here. You're not control of the people in the dance. You're in control of the dance itself, the process itself. And this has been a huge win for our clients when they go in with the old, I'm here as kind of a pawn in this game. It's a whole lot different than when they go in saying, look, not only are you looking at me, deciding if I'm the right person for you, the right solution, I'm also looking at you, asking myself, is this the kind of company who can optimize the value that we bring? So we're both in that same situation. So before we decide anything, let's go through the process. Let's decide. That positioning is different than any salesperson that you probably come across today.
Right.
And it just changes I'm looking to change the entire dynamic. I almost don't want them to see you as a salesperson. I want them to see you as a problem finder, as a problem solver, as a vision accomplisher versus a salesperson. So I'll stop. Oh, let me get to detachment, then I'll stop. In the center of all that, we used to have detachment as one of the four. There were 5 things on the outside.
Yeah.
Detachment is the idea that I am free to operate however I want to operate. I'm not attached to a sale. I'm not attached to whether people applaud for me when I walk in the room. If I shoot LinkedIn video, I'm not attached to whether people are going to love it or not. Michael Gervais has a podcast called Finding Mastery. He works for the Seattle Seahawks, and he's a sports psychologist. A good podcast. And he talks about, he says, the biggest fear we have is the fear of other people's opinions of us. Abraham Maslow said, we are not truly free until we're free of the good opinion of others. And this allows me to detach from all that. It doesn't mean that I'm arrogant, that I'm indignant. It doesn't mean I'm a jerk. It just means that whether you want to work with me or not, either way is cool. Either way is okay. And when you operate from that position, people are attracted to that because it delivers strength. It causes the person to say, yeah, you know what? I like this person because they don't need me. Nobody wants a needy person around them. And I've had people that I've reached out to before trying to buy products. And if they're too needy, it doesn't work because I know they're not really interested in me. They're only interested in what they can get out of the relationship. So detachment is at the center of all this. Probably if you were to put another little circle in there, even within detachment, it's self-worth. Mm-hmm. How we think about ourselves and how we value ourselves is really at the core. But if we value ourselves adequately, we will naturally be more detached, and it'll allow us to move around the outside of this much easier. Okay, I will stop, answer any questions. I'd like to hear what you learned from that. Anything unique, anything different? No, I'm doing all that right now. I want to hear.
To kind of position this for the aviation industry, I think most of the clients that I have zero problem with expert status. You know, they are all experts at what they do because in this industry, we have a huge bias for the meritocracy of things, you know, people who have all of all the boxes checked of, you know, their qualifications, people who are engineers, people who are pilots. You know, those are the people that are recruited as salespeople, whether or not they have any sales skills right. or background or anything else. So,
but they have all the expertise.
They have all the expertise. Yeah. And in some cases, it almost is a very unbalanced circle in the sense that they tend to think, well, you know, I'm the expert and everybody else knows all the same words I do. And everybody else understands all these concepts. And so we have to back them up a little bit and say, you really need to focus on the rest of this process and bring your prospect along with you and, you know, feel that your prospect is just as intelligent as you are, but just not in the same direction. You know, so that's a coaching item, I guess, that we have in our industry that maybe
you're saying technical knowledge can sometimes get you in trouble if you share it too much. If it's out of balance, absolutely. Right.
Or else they feel like the rest of this isn't important because I am the expert. So if they don't buy from me, it's because they just don't know enough, you know, and it's like, no, you are responsible for all of this. You're the sales guy, you know, or girl.
Yeah. The world is full of people who know a lot who can't sell.
Right.
I'll just tell you, it's just, I mean, I've got a client right now and they're in the benefits business and they're really technical. They're really good. I mean, they can solve any benefits problem, but they can't get in front of anybody.
Right.
And they can't master the process. They can't lead people through and guide them through. And so therefore their talent, their technical talent kind of goes to waste. Anybody else have a lesson here before I move on?
Well, I kind of think that when you do this right, at least in my case, I'm surprised at the outcome. In other words, I go through all this thing and then the guy says, fine, how do we make this happen? I said, oh, well, you give me your credit card. And I was just so shocked when that happens, I said, oh, okay, we're good.
You insist. I just happen to have my card reader right here. So.
That's right. And
that's the perfect outcome or the perfect reaction to once you get through the sales process is how quickly can we begin? How do we start? What's the next step? I'm in. But if you're hearing, well, let me talk to some of my people and that you've done something wrong in the process. Mm-hmm. So if you're not getting, hell yes, let's do this, then recognize, don't blame them. You have to look in the mirror and say, what did I miss here? Did I miss finding out what the problem was? Did I miss any of these attitudinal things? Did I let them control the process?
And I think that comes back to where you mentioned it's your dance. You control your dance. You don't let the consumer or the customer control it. And that's a good reminder. That's part of the sales process that I have to use, but I sometimes get in situations where I forget about that.
As the stakes get bigger, it becomes easier to forget about it. Yeah. Well, that's good on a $10,000 thing, Bill, but this is $1 million opportunity. I say, I don't care. They don't care any more about your quota than the $10,000 guy or gal does. So it's still relevant. But yeah, it's easy to forget when the stakes get high. Mm-hmm. The noose tightens a little bit, like your voice goes up. Oh God, I got to do what they asked. No, you don't. Good. Keep moving.
I gotta just say words of appreciation. One of the biggest things that I've pulled out is just that market abundance, right? I mean, and just realizing that there's an abundance in the market is just is so liberating to say, hey, if there's somebody that doesn't need a solution that I can offer, then that's fine. There's a lot of other people out there that can use it and could benefit from it. So to move on and not be take it personally and internalize that as a defeat, but rather just see it as somebody that's where it's not a good fit, as you say. So yeah, I find it really liberating.
Absolutely, it is. And that's what I think that we are better when we're free and when we're liberated. I think as human beings, when we feel like we're a hostage to something, we don't operate from a place of spirit. We're not present. We're thinking, what's going to happen if he says this? And I think that if you get these things down, you are totally present with another human being across the desk or on a Zoom call, totally present. And you don't probably have too many people in your lives, not judging, but there's not a lot of presence today. A lot of people are, thinking about what they're going to say next, or looking at their phone in between questions, or there's just a lack of present being in the present moment. So I think that's good. Okay, I'm going to move on. We have several steps here that we go through. One is mindset, which we've talked about a little bit, and I'll talk about this here in terms of marketing. Marketing is what actions are we taking when we go out to the world to generate discussions or generate leads or start conversations. And I think there's some mindsets that we need to have. Whatever, I'm not going to talk about marketing tactics today because that's not the point of this. What I'm more concerned with is, how is your mind? Are you thinking about marketing and business development in the right way? So there's 5 things here. I just did this program today with a group of people, and they got a lot out of it. So I wanted to share it with you. get your mind right about business development. Number one, feel like you are almost obligated to share your story. People are silently hoping to be led. Jay Abraham said that. They want to be led. They want to know what you have. They want to know if what you have is useful for them. But if we have no obligation to share, and we are afraid of our shadow, and we're not posting on LinkedIn, we're not doing live video, we're not doing anything where we share and educate the prospect, then you can't hope to be found. So our mental adoption and mental mindset needs to be, I'm obligated to share it. What they do with it, if they're not interested, great. If they're interested, great. But when you feel that sense of obligation, good things happen. Number two, never have any expectation. And I know this goes against a lot of what you've been taught, and I've been taught over the years, is expect everything to happen. You have to expect they're going to buy. I always feel like, wait a minute, I don't even know if they should buy. Why would I expect they're going to buy if I don't know what their problem is? I don't know whether they have money to fix the problem. I don't know whether they're going to allow me to see other people inside the firm so that I can get a real perspective on what the issues are. Why would I have any expectation? And the fact is, you shouldn't. You should detach from all results. It frees you up to ask the right questions in the right order, at the right time, to the right people, when you have no expectation. And this is hard for people because we have been trained and groomed, crate trained, as a friend of mine says, to have expectations all the time, and that expectations are good. But in sales, I don't think it leaves space for the other person to share what their issues are, what their problems are. Number three, abundance mentality. I already talked about that. Number four, mindset you have to have is, how are you building your personal brand? Are you posting content? Are you educating your suspects to why they should maybe consider a meeting with you? Are you creating anything that causes the phone to ring? It causes inbound action and energy. I do two podcasts, actually. I do the Bill Caskey podcast and the Advanced Selling podcast, and not a week goes by I don't have somebody who reaches out and says, hey, I heard the podcast on this. I've got 10 people, or I've got 100 people, or I want help for myself. And that's just a matter of building my brand and delivering good content. It doesn't take me that long each week to produce a podcast, but now people are calling me. So I don't make cold calls. I don't do cold outreach. I just would rather field calls. But you still have to do the behavior, which is you still have to turn on the mic, and you still have to record a podcast, and you still have to plan out your articles or your content strategy. But if you're not findable online, then you're not in the game. And a lot of people have fought me on this over the last 20 years. You know what? We're not an internet marketers. And I always say, wait a minute. I know you're not an internet marketer. It doesn't matter. People are going online to look for people like you. If you're not there, you're out of the game. You're on the sidelines. And I don't want you to be on the sidelines. And number five, the ultimate is, I want this to be a joyful. I want marketing to be joyful, not full of fear and anxiety and, how do I go out and figure out a way to manipulate somebody into a sales call or a meeting? I hate that. There's too much effort there. It's too much grinding. I'm not saying don't make calls, but when you make calls, get on the right attitude, and those calls will go better. One of the things I say is always start with, I have no idea if I can help. I have no idea if what I have, I'm proud of what I have. We help a lot of people, but until I know more about what you're trying to accomplish, I don't know if I can help. And you've got to believe that in your heart. If you're going to say it, it can't be a con game where you're saying that, hoping they say something else. No. You really don't know if you can help. So marketing is important, but I think the mindset around, because the mindset, if we don't have our minds right, it makes marketing harder, or we just don't do it. So any thoughts on that?
So disarming. If somebody starts the conversation from, I have no idea if I can help, I'm here to find out. I love that. I think that's a really good place to start. And so many people are afraid to not be in a position of course I can help, so it takes a certain amount of courage to be in that state.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And part of that is the old paradigms that we've grown up in. And a lot of times when I start working with a company, they'll say, well, we know we can help anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, no, you don't. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know if they're ready to move, ready to change, have any problems, have the money, about ready to go bankrupt, hate people like you. I mean, there's a lot you don't know. So I would rather start with that. I have no idea.
Right.
How are we doing on time, Paula? I don't have my watch in front of me here.
Oh, we've got about 10 minutes. And
okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. However long you want to go, I'm going to listen. So.
Okay, good. Let's go to the next one here. Okay. One of the elements is mechanics.
Yeah.
I think there's a mechanical part to selling, a language part. It's very tactical, but if you don't get the tactics and the mechanics and the language right, which is all very small stuff, sometimes it can derail you. So I just put together here first call flow. You're welcome to take a screenshot of this if you care to, or if you're inclined. First call flow. Number one, I always, whether it's Zoom, virtual, webinar, I always think it's important to acknowledge people for being there. I'm really glad you invited me in. I appreciate the time that we've set aside today. It's not thanks for letting me in. It's not. It's just an acknowledgement that you've made the invitation and we're here together. I think people need to be acknowledged. People aren't acknowledged today, so that's a good way to begin. Don't be flowery and over the top about it. Just, hey, I'm glad we're able to meet today. That could be something simple. That's cool. Number two is the upfront agreement. It sets the stage for you controlling the process. It's easy. It's elegant. Basically, it's just, I don't know if there's anything that we can do to help. What I thought we could do is ask each other some questions, and we can decide as we go whether there's a reason to go further, have another meeting, or bring other people in. I mean, it all depends on the business you're in. I've got a client who's in the geopolitical consulting space, and they're frantic right now because all these big clients are trying to figure out what's going to happen in Europe. And they've started doing this, and they said it's amazing how much the prospect opens up, or the client opens up, when you do the upfront agreement. So we're setting the stage, not only for you controlling the process, but for them feeling comfortable to share with you. Number three, I think it's important to tell a story, to start with a story. Is it okay if I give you 2 minutes on how this company that we have, if you're the owner or representative, how we do business, or how we started, or how we deliver value to people? I think it's always important to have a story. It could be your personal story. If you're in a business where your personal story matters, then I would maybe tell that. Or you could tell both. I just don't want this to go on for 30 minutes telling your story, because people will get bored with it unless you're like a master storyteller.
Right.
Number four is then at some point you got to find the problem. So I want you to have a bank of questions that will help you find out what they're really struggling with. I call it pain. There are a lot of people call it pain, problem, needs, whatever it is. I just want to know, what's the dilemma that they're facing today? Where do they want to go, and where are they, and what's the gap? And the further the gap is between where they are and where they want to go, and they've got to really tell you legitimately where they want to go, and you've got to make it comfortable for them to do so. Further the gap, the better the opportunity for you. And so you've got to master this questioning process. And I always say, whenever they answer a question, acknowledge it in some way. Some of these tools and skills are just so basic, but people don't do it. They just don't do it. And number five is you always want to have a clear action of some kind after the meeting. And that clear action could be the next call. It could be I'm going to take it and think about this for a couple days, and I'd like to reach out to you on Wednesday afternoon and book a call. You okay with that? What time would be good? 3 o'clock, okay. But I want to have some kind of clear future action. And there's always got to be something to follow up on, something to do. A lot of people miss this, even though it's real basic. So I'm not implying that you wouldn't do this already, but you never leave a call without a clear future. Okay, that's all I had today. I'm not going to get into that. That's too much. But does somebody have any observations or lessons that they've learned here? Any lesson they'll take away and are able to use in the next? Well,
I'm just kicking myself about the last call that I did. Because, I did almost all of this, and I know this because, I've read the book so many times, but I did not leave with as clear of a future action as I could have. And, so I really just need to set this up on my screen or somewhere so that when I'm making a call, I actually check every box on this, even though I think I know it. It's a checklist item that's so hard, easy to lose track of.
That's what this is. It's a checklist. I mean, if you have a document that you take notes on when you're talking to people, I would just take a screenshot of this, pop it up in the upper right corner. I don't know that you want your prospect to see it, but I don't know that it matters. But if you make it small enough, it reminds you. And so when you're looking at the notes, you think, oh God, I forgot the story.
Right.
So.
Well, in her case, she's got 2 screens, so she only shares one of them. So she has a place to put it.
Yeah, plenty of screen space.
I have a place to put it. There you go.
Phil, anything for you? Any lessons?
Well, I just on the upfront agreement, like if you could expand on that just a little bit more, just what would you, what might be an example of how you might approach, or what would be the verbiage in talking about an upfront agreement?
Well, it depends on a lot of things. I mean, let's just say it's a brand new potential client and you've never talked to them before and you're on a Zoom call. The upfront agreement would sound something like we did earlier. We just, look, I'm really glad that we were able to connect here today. You got 30 minutes. I've got 30 minutes. You still good with that? Yeah. Here's what I thought might work best today. If I shared a story with you, kind of how our company works and how we got started, then I'd like to hear from you as to what is on your mind and what some of the issues are that prompted this meeting. And then I'll share with you anything you'd like to know about how we work, and I may share with you a little bit more about our story. And then at the end, we can decide if there's any logical next step.
Okay, so just being clear about the process of the call, or
That's correct. That's correct.
Right on.
Clarity helps you and it helps them. Clarity is always, and I've seen sometimes my clients will record phone calls or they'll record Zoom calls, and I'll be able to go back and watch, and it just amazes me how we know we should do this. But before you know it, you're in. Hey, what's going on? Hey, not much. Well, tell me, Paula. Tell me what you do there. And boom, you're into it.
And you just get totally derailed.
You get swept away.
Right.
And so I always say, don't rehearse minutes 2 through 59 of the call. Rehearse the first minute. Get clear. What is my upfront agreement going to be here in this meeting? Get really clear on that, because then you can have fun, kibitz, talk about the Super Bowl or whatever. But at some point, you got to go to the upfront agreement. And if you have it memorized and have it laid out, it will be easy to say, okay, well, let's get started today. Here's what I thought we could do. Mm-hmm. You take control. They like it because you're not wresting control away from them. You're just saying, look, here's a plan. I'll share it. You tell me if you like it. Sometimes people say, no, you know what? I don't want to hear your story. I want to jump right to the problems we have. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'm not adamant about it.
I appreciate that. I mean, as pilots, you create a flight plan, right? You build a flight plan. Here's the plan. Doesn't mean you're always going to, follow the route that you originally planned. But if it's clear to start with, from your dispatchers and the flight crew, everybody, at ATC, they know what the plan is. Everybody knows it can change, but in the end, the goal is to get to the destination, and how you do that can take different ways. But no, I appreciate that.
It's always, if I were in your business, I would use that very example every time. Look, we're in the air business of flight, and here's what I know about pilots. There's always a plan, so I've got a plan. Let me share it with you, and then you tell them, boom. Now they understand, they've connected. Yeah, you know what? We got a checklist. We got a plan. Mm-hmm. I really like that.
Yeah, people in this industry love checklists, and they do. You may be off the plan 99% of the time, but you're going to get there. So
anyway, well, I hope this has been helpful. I tried to make it go quick, but still answer some questions. So hopefully it was helpful for the people attending.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you taking the time with us today. And, this was so helpful, I think, for everybody in our industry. And, like I said, this is probably the best sales book. Everybody that gets into one of our workshops and things like that gets this book, whether they want it or not. And we end up talking about it an awful lot.
Awesome.
Right.
Okay, Paula, thank you very much. John, Phil, whoever else was on, Doug, he left. Mm-hmm. I burned him out quickly. So hope you all have a great weekend.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Paula, for hosting this. Appreciate you. Thanks for the invite.
You're very welcome.
Paula. Okay.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
See you guys later. Stay safe and happy.